Well, I actually grew up, that's always a difficult question. Where are you from? I was born in Virginia. Both my parents were in the Navy, but I moved to Texas when I was 2. We lived in South Texas. We lived in deep East Texas. We lived in Greenville. We lived in Garland. In 13 years of school, kindergarten through 12th, I went to 13 different schools. Most of that was in the early years. I went to high school, the same high school all 4 years, and changed mostly during those elementary school years. When I was in 5th grade, I got selected to be a safety patrol officer. It involved getting to go to a camp to learn traffic rules and how to safely escort kids through the intersections there in Nacogdoches. And I was a little bit, well, not a little bit, I was a class clown. And I was surprised, frankly, even at 10 years of age, at my selection for that honor. But someone saw some potential in me despite my knuckleheadedness and decided to try to develop that. And that was really a transformational experience in my life. I did go to college initially on a trombone scholarship. I was going to be a band director, and decided in the first semester that while I loved band when I was in it, it was not for me. I moved back and went to East Texas State University, which is now Texas A&M Commerce. And while I was there, I met my now wife. We're about to celebrate our 32nd wedding anniversary, but we were the ripe old age of 18 when we met. We married at 19 years of age, and so we took a whole year off of college just to get to know one another. I think it definitely helped our marriage. And then we went to college together for a while, but then she got pregnant. She stayed home with the boys while I finished up. So I worked all the way through school, and sometimes a couple of jobs. I sold jewelry at Walmart, loaded trucks for UPS, cleaned bedpans at a hospital, whatever I could do, and worked through college. Went to seminary later, and then I quit going to school, and my wife went to nursing school when the boys, we by then had 2, were old enough to go to school. And then later, when she finished and I was teaching school, I made the decision when I was in my 30s to go to law school and went to SMU Law School. We lived here in Sulphur Springs then, and I actually drove back and forth for 3 years to SMU Law School. Tried to work a little part-time while I did that. That was difficult to do, but our boys were in school here and we didn't want to take them out. So my educational experience is a little different than most, I think. I am the district judge for the 8th Judicial District. Texas has about 400 different judicial districts. Now, like in Dallas County, the big counties, sometimes they may have 20 or 30 judges in that one county. Whereas here, where we're not so high in population numbers, my judicial district covers 4 counties: Hopkins County, which is where Sulphur Springs is, and then Franklin County, Delta County, and Rains County. So Mount Vernon, Cooper, and Emory would be the cities and towns that people would recognize. And while I have jurisdiction to hear all manner of civil lawsuits, family law cases, I do hear some family law cases, but the primary load I have are felony cases, which are major crimes. They're misdemeanor crimes. Those are not quite so serious. You might could go to jail, whereas felony cases are cases where if you're convicted, you can go to prison for as little as 6 months all the way up to life in prison with no parole. And sadly, we even have a few cases where the ultimate punishment of death could be assessed by a jury. And if that's the case, that would be the death penalty. So we've got some real serious crimes that we deal with in our courts. You know, integrity tells us who you really are when no one's looking. It is how committed you are to the moral principles that you have, and to the ethics, the rules of ethics that you have. Integrity is an important word. You know, to help kids, we have young kids and older kids who will hear this. Integrity can also, it comes from the same word, and many of these kids in math, even in 5th grade, will begin to study integers, that is whole numbers, not fractions or with decimals, but whole numbers. And And we get our word integrity from the root of that word, which means whole or complete. And engineers use that. When our kids go to Dallas and they're driving on those overpasses, and they're sometimes scary and fun to go over. You go up high and the bridge overpasses. Well, we don't think anything about that, but somebody with incredible skill and knowledge, an engineer, needed to make sure that that bridge had integrity. It was structurally sound, whole and complete, so that we don't think anything about it when we drive over. If it's not, we're all in trouble. And that's the same thing. I deal with people on a day in and day out basis who have violated their very integrity. And sometimes it's just a one-time moral lapse that doesn't necessarily define them, or sometimes it tells us really who they are. It doesn't mean they can't change. There's always hope, always hope. But what I find is that when people lack integrity, they make horrible decisions that destroy themselves and others. You know, we deal with a lot of different kind of crimes, and sadly, while we have a lot of drug offenses, possession of methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, I dealt with 3 cases yesterday dealing with possession, delivery of cocaine or heroin and methamphetamine. They destroy people's lives. Many of the crimes we have are related to that. Most of the burglaries we have, whether it's breaking into someone's house and stealing stuff, breaking into a building and stealing things, whether it is forging somebody's name on a check. We have those kind of forgery of financial instrument, we call that. Using someone's credit card or debit card without their permission almost always traces back to drugs. People who commit those kinds of offenses are doing that to get money for drugs. And there's where you see oftentimes people who had a moral lapse in judgment in using the drugs, and now all of a sudden what seemed like a fun thing to do now is completely taken over their life. But most of the people have the ability to change, want to change, need some help to change, and we do whatever we can to change. But inevitably, they have somehow veered off their moral, they've lost their moral compass, they've made horrible decisions, and sometimes they beat themselves up and think that's who they are. I frequently will tell them, what you've done doesn't have to define you. This can be a change in your life. If I put someone on probation, I tell them, the next thing I want to sign in your case is not a warrant for your arrest because you've messed your probation up. I want to sign an order releasing you from probation and releasing you earlier than what we're putting you on. If I'm putting you on for 5 years, I hope I can let you off in 3 years because you've done so well that you've made it abundantly clear to everybody that we have found the real you and you're on the right path. You know, I mentioned a moment ago that one of the things that was transformational in my life was the selection by adults for me to take a leadership position as a safety patrol officer. And that will seem like not a big deal. It was the world to me then. And that helped to guide and define me. I still had my knuckleheaded moments, by the way. I was still growing up and I had to be corrected and so forth. But if you set patterns and habits now, then those will become patterns and habits as an adult, good or bad. And so, you know, the age-old adage and the golden rule of treat others like you want to be treated applies now. And if you treat people the way you want to be treated, then you're going to act in such a way, whether people are looking or not, that gives evidence of your moral compass. You know, it's real simple things. It's so easy now to cheat, much easier than when I was a kid, because we have the internet and so forth. And it may not be that if you're in your room and you're doing some assignment and you can cheat, you might not, nobody's watching, nobody might know, but you'll know. And when you make that compromise in your moral compass, the little compromise now, you start down a slippery slope. And the kinds of decisions that I see adults make in my court, you can trace that back to poor decisions that they began to make as a young person. And it really set the direction for where they ultimately landed in my court.